Hello, hello. This is Minister Sharon Brumfield, and I'm on Let's Chat. Today we have a special guest and we have a special segment. Mother's Day is coming up, and I want to celebrate moms. I want to share some information, some tips, some ways that we can navigate our way. And today we're talking about empty nesting. You know, when that last child leaves, or as children go off to college and they begin to move off into their own apartments, their own homes, building their own families, something happens on the inside of us. And so Latreeta Burns has joined me today, and I want to share her experience with you. And she wants to share some ways that, you can look at the situation not as a loss, right? But as a way to do something differently.
Yes.
So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Latreeta.
Yep. So again, my name is Latreeta Burns. I'm married for 24 years, to be 24 years. Have two sons who are in college. One is 19 and one is 21. And I work as a behavioral health liaison for United Healthcare. I do other things, but that's the gist of it.
Gist of it. All right. So where did this journey to empty nesting start with you all?
Well, it started when my 21-year-old graduated from high school, and we were preparing him to go off to college, and he was excited to play football in college. So I would like to say the journey started maybe 2 years before, because we traveled around the world trying to find like the best college for him, as far as him being able to play football. So we explored so many different opportunities. So we know we were transitioning to that stage, right? And we invested a lot of time and money into transitioning into that stage. And so then in August of, I believe it was 2021, he left for college. So we dropped him off or he started attending UW River Falls, and he was playing football there. So we were excited about the next stage, because he was excited about going there and he wanted to continue to pursue football. So we were excited for him.
All
It's
right,
very bittersweet.
But I want to go back a little bit. You talked about transitioning.
Yes.
That word comes up a lot in life. We have to
Mm-hmm.
transition from kindergarten to grade school, then you transition to middle school, but you're talking about a different type of transition. It's the leaving home transition. It's the dropping your kid off at college transition. I remember it vividly when we dropped our daughter off at college, and just that whole idea of, okay, I'm leaving her here and
Yeah.
I'm going back home. So walk us through that transition of that day when you did the drop off.
Yeah, so when we did the drop off, we drove up there. We I think before we even made it to the drop off, I was in mom mode, like making sure he had everything possible, right? So he wouldn't have to need for anything. And of course, we got there, went to Walmart, still spent more money, right? So that made me feel secure as a mom, that he had everything he needed and he wouldn't want for anything, right? So that was one thing that I could check off my list that just made me feel good about leaving him there. Because you just don't want your child like to need anything or want anything. So it's just like you don't even think about money. Yes, yes, let's get it. And I think he had more stuff than he could even fit in his room. We had to take some of it home. Like, you know what I mean? So we did that part. And because he went for football, we went up there, I think 2 weeks before school started, because he had to do like kind of a boot camp for football. And so they had a nice celebration. It was very welcoming. And they're kind of like telling the parents, preparing the parents to say, okay, at some point you're gonna have to say bye to your child, right? So they kind of prepare us to say, okay, so you're gonna say bye to them at like 5 o'clock. We're going to show you around the campus. You're going to eat lunch together. But at 5 o'clock, you're going to say bye. So we said bye. But in our mind, we was like, we meet you at 10 p.m. Like it don't even matter. So we saw him at like 8, 9 o'clock at night when he got done with everything with football, and we kind of make sure still he had everything he needed. And then it was that final goodbye that I think we were all in the circle praying. I think Lemar was up there with us, and I just broke down. I'm like, I'm leaving my baby here, like the one I sent with a checklist to everybody, whoever at 2 months. It didn't matter if he was going to my mama, just didn't matter. Like, so it was always that control, and you want to make sure you shape them. You want to make sure they have everything they need, and you don't want them to want for anything. So I just leaving him was just so hard. So I started crying, and then it was just a trickle effect.
Right.
Right. Then it's like Niagara Falls. Like everybody is crying. And then Ethan was just uncontrollably crying, right? Because that's been his play. My son, Ethan, for those who don't know, is my youngest. That was his playmate. Right. That's who he's known his whole life. And he kind of was always in his shadows. So now he had to find his own identity. So there were a lot of different transitions that were going on at that time. But I think the biggest thing was really letting go and letting him launch and being okay with it.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I remember that day vividly. We drove up. And then she was having some challenges with her room assignment. So I remember she stayed on campus, and then the next day we had to come back because I just wanted to make sure that everything was situated, because we had brought all this stuff up here. We didn't know why she was having some challenges with her room assignment and why she didn't have a room specifically, but they said, no, this happens sometimes. It just takes a couple of days for us to, get things situated. And I'm like, well, we're going to have to stay a little longer. I know we decided we were going to stay several days anyway, just so we were drive up there, drop her off and leave. We weren't going to do that. But it was the whole, okay, what's happening? I can't leave until she has a room. I can't leave until I help her make this bed up. I can't leave until I put all her stuff in this room for her. So it took a couple of days before she was able to get settled in her space, and we got to meet her roommates and their parents and things like that. And then on the ride home, it's just like a sinking feeling in your gut.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh my goodness, I'm really leaving her here, and I'm going miles and
yours is far.
She was in DC, and we're just dropping her off. It's not like I can just get there quickly if something is needed. So, that was a hard transition for us. And then when you get home and then you finally settle back in and you're like, okay, now what? What do we do now? He's not here.
It's like something is missing. So like we still had Ethan, so that helped, but I felt like it was just a part of the family that a family member that wasn't present. Like it was just the weirdest thing. I felt like he should be coming out his room. Like, you know what I mean? Or we're going to the movies, that extra space, that person is missing. So it was an adjustment. So it took me a couple months to adjust to him being gone.
And then what were your thoughts about what he was doing? Were you overly concerned? Were you checking in? Were you still giving him tips like, okay, make sure that you don't get with the wrong people. Make sure that you're keeping yourself, in line with what you should be doing?
Yeah, that was a struggle as well. Because I think one time we were talking and he was saying something about being out at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm thinking to myself, you shouldn't be out at that time. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Or walking to somebody's house at that time. I'm like, okay, but if I didn't know he was out at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would just think he's okay. I got to believe that what we've already sown into him, what we prayed over him will come up at this appointed time. So I really had to let go and let God, but also really give him life skill tips, survival tips, because it used to be when girls launched out, when we were growing up, when girls launched out, we were more concerned about them, right? Just someone taking advantage of them. But now, the way society is, I'm more concerned about the boys launching out. Right, because of police and the system and everything. So we had to give him more survival tips. I was more concerned about him being able to protect himself, or if he was stopped by the police, how do you behave if the police pull you over? So those are the things that I had to educate him about and prepare him about as he leave, and being involved with girls, and making sure, that he doesn't get involved with the wrong person, because one decision can change your life.
Yes, exactly.
So so we had to have different conversations with him than maybe my parents would, say to me, or even my brothers when we were launching out. It's just different. It's a different time. So you have to have different conversations and kind of just be aware of that. And, always just kind of talk to him about, staying away from alcohol and drugs. Because, when you drink those, when you participate in those, that's when the time when you're not able to make good decisions. That's when you do get in the most trouble. So it was those types of things that we would continually talk to him about while he was up there. So honestly, I think I felt better about him being up in River Falls than staying here in Milwaukee.
Wow. Okay. So tell us more about that. What made you feel that was a safer place for him?
Well, I know it's a college town, number one, and I believe they don't have the crime and the poverty like we do here in Milwaukee. And I think it's just harder for Black males to succeed here in Milwaukee. So, and I felt like he would be safer. I wouldn't be concerned about, reckless driving up in that area. So if he were to drive, I feel much more comfortable with him in River Falls, or going out at night, or doing whatever, being more free. He's able to be more free up in River Falls than he could be here in Milwaukee. So.
Got it. Okay, got it. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I want you to tell me about that second transition and with Ethan going off to college. All right. So we'll be right back after this.
Yeah.
All right, we're back. Okay, so Latreeta, now we've talked about your oldest son going off to college. And now it's time for Ethan to go off to college. Walk us through that.
Yeah, that was a harder one than I anticipated, because I've already had a kid launch. So I kind of knew how I would feel, what it would be like, what I needed to do. So I was kind of like already in an automatic mode, like, okay, this is what we need to do. And so I never thought about how I would feel emotionally when he left. So I disregarded it. I was just like, well, Ephraim left and took me a couple months and I was fine, so I'm gonna be okay. That's just kind of where I was at. But also I think that I was in such a caregiver mode because I was kind of seeing after my mom too. So I didn't even really have a lot of space to process him leaving while my mom was kind of dealing with her stuff as well. So.
All right. And so you've gotten your oldest off to college. He's had a successful year or two. Was it 2 years?
Yeah.
2 years. So you feel like, okay, the second time, I already know the drill. I already know what's happening. But it didn't go the same way.
Absolutely not. So, we got them all prepared. And again, I'm in checklist mode. I just got to make sure you got everything right. So we're doing that. Want to make sure he's comfortable. Had a nice dorm room, and this time my nephew Arsenio went with us, drove us up there, and it was all a smooth transition, kind of similar with Ephraim. The football team welcomed him. Connected with other football players, and then they had a dinner. And this time with the dinner, it was final. Like, okay, we're going to give y'all 10 to 3, unpack, set up the room, go to the store, whatever you need to do. But by 3, we need you here, dinner, and then parents buy. Like, so it was very like, it was a definite cutoff. And I was like, okay, okay. And I still thought I was good until they said, okay, parents. Like, I'm like, okay, like we really have to go, right? We can't see them at 10. And I just broke down in tears, like a stream again, in the middle of the dining area, but everybody was crying, right? All the parents, the brothers, the sisters, everybody was crying. So it wasn't just me, everybody was crying. And then Ethan started crying, and then Ephraim, and big Ephraim, because his brother was gone. And so I was like, wow, this is tough leaving him here. I'm trying to figure out, why is it harder? And I said, I think it was, I didn't have space or time to process what it would mean to me with him leaving.
Right.
So, yeah. So, and I think my mom was in hospice the same time that he left. So, like, I just didn't have the capacity. And then it's like, yeah, now the floodgates are open, now it just all comes out, so I just didn't have the space for it. So,
all right. All right. So we got both boys in college. They're doing their thing.
Yeah.
What's it like at home now? Like, are you the one that say, okay, these rooms, I'm turning these rooms into this? Or is it, oh my gosh, what do I do with myself now?
Yeah, it was, oh my gosh, what do I do with myself now? My husband and I both were looking at each other like, what do we even say to each other? Like, what? Like, it was the craziest thing. And it was just so creepy quiet at home, right? Not used to that. Used to a lot of interaction. And I did take Ephraim's room and kind of turn it into a prayer room for me. But it was a huge adjustment. For me, I think it was because, number one, Ethan is a talker. So everybody was always in their room, but somehow he would find a way into the kitchen and talk to me, probably from 8 to 10 o'clock or something like that, about his day and what was happening at school. And once he left, I never realized how much I appreciated that. Those conversations, those interactions. And in the conversations we would have, I was hearing and learning about his growth as a person.
Wow. Okay.
Without me saying, hey, how are you doing here? Or how are you making decisions? I was listening to it for how is his decision making when I'm not around him. So, you know what I mean? Because I think I was more concerned about him leaving than Ephraim. I felt like Ephraim was more focused and more determined and was going to always be able to keep himself on track. I just wasn't always quite sure about that with Ethan. I think he's very social, and likes to engage and talk to people. So I could see him being very distracted. So I think a part of me was very concerned about him leaving, and would he be able to be focused enough to, do his work and not always be with his friends. So, yeah.
All right. So we've gotten the boys. They're off. They're doing their thing. You're figuring yourself out. You're figuring out life at home with your husband. How do we reconnect? Because you guys were super busy. I mean, you were always at a game, always off somewhere with something that the boys had to do. They pretty much was what you did, your life, what you all did, making sure they had a plan for what they were going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember even for Ethan's last year of school, I think we were traveling literally from February to July. Yeah. You know what I mean? So our life did evolve around theirs, and it did. And that was just kind of how it was, because we wanted to make sure that we did everything possible to give them the best opportunities. And that meant just, committing our time and our resources to that. And so having our life revolve around that and really not being able to do anything else, what do you do when that's gone.
Right.
Like, right? It's like this big black hole. We like, what do we need to go to a game? I mean, what do we need to do? Like, it was really a big adjustment for us when both of them were gone, because we're like literally looking at each other like we have nothing to do. We have too much time on our hands, and we couldn't even say that probably for the last 10 years.
Wow. What now? That's a transition, Latreeta.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because Efren, my husband, was coaching. So he coached them probably from fifth grade up until eighth, no, third until eighth grade.
Okay.
He was
Okay.
their coach. He was there at
Mhm.
practice with them, and he took them to the doctor. So his life revolved around them more than mine did.
Right. Right. Man, that's something to go from constantly moving, traveling, games, all of that to now cricket, cricket. We're in this house. What do we do now?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for my husband, he cried and he cried and he couldn't stop crying. Even when we would drop off my oldest at school,
Mhm.
probably for the first year, whenever we dropped him off, he was crying.
Okay. Just that overwhelming feeling like, okay, you're going back.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
going back to school. There's
yeah.
some quotes I saw that about empty nesters. It says, it's not only children who grow, parents do too. As much as we watch to see what our children do with their lives, they are watching us to see what we do with ours.
Mm,
Isn't that something?
yeah, that is, that is.
Because
Because
we're focused on helping them grow and helping them develop and, making sure that we point them in the right direction and fill them with everything. And now, how will you guys grow? What will you guys do with your life now? That they're moving on and growing and developing. And so now they may be turning around looking and say, okay, well, what mom gonna do now? What is dad doing now? What are they focusing on now?
yeah, like how do we respond to change? Like, are we just going to stay stuck,
Right.
hoping to go to a basketball game or a football game? Are we going to stay stuck there? Or are we going to take this opportunity to learn something new, learn something different, right? And continue to grow and evolve. And even our relationship with our children, we have to shift from being a parent to a coach.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Like I can't, like, when they come back home, now we're living with young adults. You know what I mean? And so now they've picked up habits and different things from when they're now living on their own. But now they're coming back home to a home environment where there was a different structure.
Yeah.
So that's an adjustment when they do come back home for breaks. You know what I mean? And I try to give them more leeway now than try to be so picky. Okay, I'll let you eat in your room because before you that's something you couldn't do, but you're a
Mhm.
young adult now. I'm gonna believe you're gonna clean up or we're gonna have conversations, but I'm gonna be your coach. I
Mhm.
gotta be able to help support you along the way with your decisions, right? Versus
Mhm.
just now it can't be no, you can't do that. Well, no, you can do whatever you want. You know what I mean? So
Right. We're going to take another commercial break because I really want to dig into that life when they come back from break. What does that look like? And how do you transition your thoughts, your behaviors, what you believe in order to have a cohesive environment in your home? All right. So we'll
yeah.
be right back after this. Welcome back. I have Latreeta Burns here with me, and we're talking about being empty nesters and what's next after that. Once our kids move out on their own or they go off to college and we're home, what do we do after that? How do we make those adjustments? And before the break, we were just about to talk about, coming home. When our college students come home, what does that look like? What changes do we need to make in order to have a cohesive environment in our home. So walk us through that, Latreeta. You've gone through this several times, different spring breaks and Christmas breaks and winter breaks and all of that. When one or both of the young men come home, tell us how you work through that.
Yeah, so it's an adjustment when they leave and launch, right? But I didn't even think about the adjustment for when they come home because now they've been on their own. And when you live on your own, you start to develop your own habits, which could be different from when you left from home.
Mhm.
So I think for us, it was getting used to what their new habits are. So now I might have somebody that's one of them that might be up at 3 o'clock in the morning and laughing and talking like it's 2 p.m.
Mhm.
Or I might have another one who might not, who might just eat oranges and kind of just leave them all over the place. And I'm like, well, no, that's not what we did when we were here. You find the garbage. Do you not have one where you at? I'm like, I'm confused. But I said, I think it's just more lax and that's just kind of how they do it. So I try to be in the present. I try to have blinders on.
Mhm.
So I try not to be picky about everything.
Mhm.
And because I would be talking about, my way of doing things all the time, right? And I think that takes away from the relationship and
Mhm.
the experience of them being home and being present with them and listening to how they're changing mentally. I don't want to
Mhm.
miss that. And I'm being so focused and picky on some of their new habits. So
Okay.
that's what I had to learn.
All right. So you you pick your battles.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm gonna let that one slide, or I'm gonna let this slide, but this one we're gonna have to talk about. This
Yes.
one you just can't do. So, when it comes to, boundaries, do they have curfews now, or, how does that work?
So we'll kind of have a discussion about where are you going, because this is Milwaukee. So I need to know where they're at and who are they choosing to be around. So it doesn't matter how old you are. It's really about your safety, and I want to know your decision making. I need to know that, and I need to know who are you trying to be around because that can make a difference.
Right.
So we talk about where are they going and what would be a good time to get back home.
Okay. All right. All right. Those are baby steps, right?
Yeah,
You guys are, because, when they're not in your presence, when they're off at school, you don't know
don't know.
what time they're coming in, and
Mm-mm.
they've made their lifestyle, and this is what they do. They have their schedule. They're making it work. So when they come home, you don't want to put them back into um, high school
Right.
boundaries, and expectations, and they have grown, they have matured at some level. So you want to give them a little bit extra rope, and not
Yeah.
hold so tight. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a balance. Yes, they need to have their freedom, right? Because we do want them to come home, right? We don't want them to feel like they're restricted here. But we do have conversations with them about, like, no, we're not, trying to keep you, restricted or really control what you're doing because we don't trust you. We're just concerned about Milwaukee and
Mhm.
kind of the environment and the culture, you know what I mean? So, and the safety of wherever you go when you're in Milwaukee. There's certain places you shouldn't go. You know what I mean? At certain times, certain gas stations. So those are things that we're looking out for more than anything than trying to be restrictive. So we try to have those conversations with them to let them know why we're doing it. So
And so I really pray that those who are listening today, that you've gotten a nugget, you've gotten something that can help you on your journey. If you're a new empty nester, or if it's going to be happening in a year or so, you can see from Latreeta's experience that there was some transition that took place prior to her boys going off to college. There was some planning that took place before they went off to college. So take all this in, take some notes so that you can make some of those adjustments on your journey with your children, leaving home, going off to college, even getting married, starting families. All of those things are the transitions that we could
Yeah.
experience as parents. And so before we close, I want us to talk a little bit about the idea of the empty nester syndrome. So Latreeta, tell us, what was your takeaway when you were doing some reading on that?
Yeah, so I didn't know there was a difference between an empty nester, like the life event of children launching and leaving, and then the empty nester syndrome, which could be like symptoms that you experience as a result of the children leaving. So
Right.
I think I was experiencing the empty nester syndrome and didn't know that's what was happening. So
Mhm.
if now I think it's important to do research in that area so you can start preparing yourself emotionally for that, because it is like grief, right? Where you're losing something that you're used to. It doesn't mean that they're dead and gone, but it's a loss. It's a change. It's a difference in how your life has been. So if it's a change in how your life has been, that's a loss. And I
Yes.
don't even know if we really, really look at it like that. And I think we have to give ourselves space and time to start processing what that will be like for us before it happens.
I totally agree, Latrina. And it's the staying in the sadness,
Yeah,
long term,
yeah,
not being able to move forward. Like you said, it is, it can be traumatic, you
yes,
know, because you're with your children all of these years, and then now they're excited to leave. They can't wait to go,
yeah,
even though they're crying too, but it's the difference. They're sad because they know they won't see you every day, but they're also excited to go and start this new journey in their lives, and leaving mom and or dad, or mom and dad at home. Then mom and dad are left like, what do we do now? And if you
yes,
don't have a plan for what do we do now, then you'll stay in that syndrome. You'll
yeah.
stay in that place of sadness, longing for them to come back. Can't. And then once they get back, you smother them because you've been longing for them to come back so long. And it can just be a cycle that keeps you stuck and keeps you stagnant.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where it can become dysfunctional, right?
Mhm.
When you don't have a plan to help you to be able to, where you don't even acknowledge that the emotions are there, right? And
Mhm.
then you don't have a plan for how you're going to be able to process those emotions and be able to live and enjoy life beyond them.
Yes.
You have to reclaim your life, right? You do. You got to reclaim your life. You got to redefine your life, reimagine your life, and kind of see what it would look like now. Like,
Right.
who am I? What do I want to do? Who is my husband? Like, what is our marriage going to look like now? Because now our marriage is in a different phase than it was before, because it was always surrounded or organized around the children.
Yeah. And those are steps that people may not be aware of. Those are things that you can start that transition while you're planning for your child's transition to college. You should be planning for your transition to be an empty nester. There's other quote I can't find. Oh, here it is. You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. So it's never too late. Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to go back to school. Whatever it is, you're never too old to do that. And now you're going to have that time to do it, because
Yeah,
kids take up time. We're taking them here, taking them there. We're doing all sorts of things. But now you have all this time on your hands, sitting down and putting a vision board together. Like, what does my life look like now? What is
yeah.
it that I want to do that I couldn't do before? Bring that stuff back up and begin working on some of those things.
Yeah, I agree. So it's basically like you're turning the page of your story, right? And now you have a blank canvas to write a new part of your story. But, now you have an opportunity and the freedom to now be free to really think about what do you want to do and how can you fulfill purpose this next phase of your life,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. That's this has been really, eye opening. And I pray that those who are watching tonight, you can see what type of transitions take place. It's not just, oh, the kids are going off to college. Those are life changes that are taking place, not only in the children, in the parents, and the siblings.
Yes.
So, and we didn't even talk about that a lot. You did
No.
share, Ethan was, feeling sadness because they are feeling that loss also. You
Yes.
know, they're going to be missing their sibling also. That person that was always there for them, or the person that helped them out with their homework. And now, you know, whatever they experience together, they won't have that until they
Right.
come back home. And then they may not have it when they come back home because that person is different.
Yes,
You
very different. Both of them are different in some ways, right? Yeah.
they've been gone for months
Yeah.
doing their own thing, making their own life, getting started on what they desire to do. And when they come back, you're like, who is this person? You know,
Exactly.
they go from the messy kid, go off to college and come back, and they're not that way anymore. And you're like,
Yeah.
who is this? Or
Right. Right.
vice versa.
Yeah.
Now they're a little bit more laxed. They're not as, on it as they were before. But we have to be able to see the differences and make the adjustments so that, again, we can have a cohesive environment in our home when college students come back after their during their breaks. And so, is there any final thoughts, experiences you want to share with the audience before we end our show today, Latreeta?
We're gonna have life events in our family, whether it's going transitions, whether they're going from middle school, elementary school, high school, college, right? It's gonna happen. But I think the difference, I think in thinking about this whole process, that we shouldn't let things just happen. We really should be trying to prepare and plan for it to happen, prepare emotionally. I don't think I was preparing emotionally because I saw people who were sad when their kids left, but I still didn't understand the magnitude of what was happening and how
Mhm.
it was reshaping their family, and that it was a significant loss. So I'm just saying that you have to prepare for it so you don't get lost in the transition.
Right.
You have to still reclaim yourself, reclaim your life. And actually, this is a new opportunity to do new things, but you have to see it from that perspective. So,
Yeah. And again, it's not just for college students,
right.
it's for children that leave off on their own. They decide it's time for me to move and I'm going to get in my own apartment. It's for those that decide to get married and now they move out and they're starting their families.
Yes.
you know, all of it is the same. It brings us to the same place of being an empty nester and finding newness in who we are, finding purpose that we can continue, finding a place where we can deal with that sadness, because it is a time of, it's not death, but it is a mourning in some way
It
because
is.
the relationship is different,
Yeah.
and we go through that emotionally and we go through it mentally. And then for some, there's some physical things that happen, because they're holding that grief in, they're holding that
Yeah.
sad in, and it can cause some physical challenges to come about as well. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And like Latreeta said, plan. We've got to make adjustments. We got to look ahead and say, okay, this is about to happen. How am I going to feel? Do some research, get a book, read, go Google it so that you can begin to make some plans for how you're going to handle being an empty nester. So thank you, Latreeta.
Yeah. Yep,
I
you're very welcome. And I just want to add, that it's okay to seek a therapist, to seek a counselor to help you in that transition, because you could possibly have some blind spots, meaning things that you're not thinking of, you're not aware of, or you're having these emotions and you don't understand why. And a counselor, like at Clear Thinking Counseling with Minister Brumfield, could definitely help you get to the root of that and be able to help you through this transition better.
yeah,
So you'll get through it, but having somebody to talk to and having a space and a place for that, I think it helps you go through it much smoother.
I agree. And seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It's really a sign that you're loving on yourself and you
Yes.
want to do better. You need someone who's on the outside who can look in and see what you're not able to see. And so,
Ye-
yes, I totally agree with you, Latreeta. And so, again, thank you very much for
Oh, you're
joining me
very welcome.
today.
Yes.
This was very enlightening, and I pray that those who are tuning in today, you were able to gather some information, especially for those who have high school students that are getting ready to go to college.
Mhm.
We don't always know what we need, you
Right.
know, we don't always know, but now the door has been opened, and now you can begin that research to help you with that transition as you move forward. So again, thank you so very much. I just want to share information with moms. Mother's Day is fast approaching, and I just want to celebrate moms and encourage moms during this time. So I can't wait to hear back from some of the people that have tuned in today to let us know that this was a segment that really was able to change your life and help you to get started on your journey and your transition to being an empty nester. So you guys have an amazing day, and we'll talk to you all soon. Be
Yes.
blessed.
Bye bye.